Avengers Endgame, the time travel paradox. In Avengers Endgame, while Hulk, Ant-Man, and Rhodey discuss and plan the time heist, Ant-Man and the rest assume that just going back in time might fix their problems because it'd change the future. This is where we're introduced to one of the first rules of time traveling in Marvel. Going back to the past doesn't change the future. Hulk explains that if you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
He implies that traveling back in time creates an alternate timeline separate from the one you came from, meaning that there would be no way for you to return to your original timeline. You'd live forever in the separate branch you created. Later, during the time heist, a conversation between the Hulk and the Ancient One solidifies this even more. While attempting to convince the Ancient One to give him the Time Stone, the Sorcerer Supreme states that removing a stone from its timeline creates dangerous branches to dark and twisted alternate realities, which is exactly why Steve Rogers ends up returning them at the end of the movie to the exact specific points in time that the Avengers took them from. And all the logic we've followed so far says he should now vanish into the new timeline he made by jumping back, right? Except we see Steve as an old man back in the main timeline when he gives Sam the shield. So, is this a plot hole for a sweetheart of a character, or can we make sense of it? Well, turns out there are exceptions to everything, even time travel. Using the Hank Pym particles and the time GPS, which made the time heist possible in the first place, Steve was able to jump back in time and return the stones. He just had a bit of particles left over, which he used with the GPS to return to the main timeline. This was confirmed by the Russo brothers in a Reddit AMA. So it turns out he didn't actually break the rules, he just found a really convenient way around them. Unfortunately, the rest of these rule breaks aren't so cut and dry. The Time Stone versus Endgame's time rules. One of the clearest contradictions in the MCU comes from how time itself is supposed to work. Back in Doctor Strange, the Time Stone was introduced as a tool that could directly manipulate and rewrite events. Strange demonstrated this to Mordo and Wong by rewinding an apple over and over. Later, he used it against Dormammu, trapping the cosmic entity in a never-ending time loop until it agreed to leave Earth. These scenes establish that the Time Stone allows its wielder to alter their own timeline, to reverse actions, undo destruction, and relive the same moment again. Only one small problem: that doesn't line up with what Bruce Banner explained in Endgame. He clearly stated that going back to the past doesn't change your future, and that it's impossible for an individual to alter their own timeline's events, only make different choices that create branches to other alternate timelines. If Endgame's rules are absolute, then how did Strange ever rewind the apple or undo Caecilius's destruction in Hong Kong? Those were direct changes to his own present, exactly what Bruce says is impossible. The films never really elaborate on this. The closest in-universe explanation: Strange wasn't traveling through time in the same way the Avengers did with Pym particles. Think of it as Strange picking and choosing localized points in the timeline to edit, while the Avengers, with the Pym particles, get to jump to and from any point in time. Strange can't exactly edit fixed points the way the Avengers did. It would cause some pretty big damage. Loki and the TVA. So, with Loki Season 1, you had the Time Variance Authority as a sort of cosmic authority that manages and supervises what they call the sacred timeline, which is the one our team of heroes comes from. The show also introduced the concept of Nexus events, which are any events that cause a branch in the timeline, leading to the creation of multiple timelines. So, the reason this doesn't work is because the time heist should have created many Nexus events, and subsequently many timelines that needed to be pruned. Only, the thing is, when Loki's on trial for all of his time shenanigans, he cleverly points out that the Avengers are guilty of the same. He gets this response:
I suspect the Avengers.
We're not here to talk about the Avengers.
Oh, no?
No. What they did was supposed to happen. You escaping was not.
The MCU flat out tells us that the Timekeeper, and especially He Who Remains, love to play favorites with what they consider a Nexus event that needs to be pruned. Later on in the show, it's also revealed that the Timekeepers are just a front for He Who Remains, and that their actual purpose isn't to eliminate any and every Nexus event, but just the ones that create branches to alternate timelines where Kang variants might emerge. Still, the message is clear. The rules of time aren't set in stone, and some events do get a pass, so there's a lot of room for discrimination here. Dreams become glimpses into another life. Another endearing concept we're introduced to in Multiverse of Madness is America Chavez casually dropping the lore bomb that dreams are not just your mind tripping, but actual glimpses into alternative universes. Know why this doesn't really work? Because it's kind of just introduced to hype up the concept of dreamwalking, an integral plot point in the entire movie. Still, past MCU dreams, like Wanda dreaming about living in Westview with Billy and Tommy, or Tony dreaming about the Avengers dying, or Thor dreaming about Asgard's destruction, were all framed as just dreams. Like the way normal people have them. They weren't mirrors into other universes where all these things could really be happening. So that leaves us with a new bag of questions. Are all the dreams we've seen potential parts of the multiverse? Will some of these characters ever become aware of that? Can they potentially be used to travel to different universes? We know dreamwalking lets you control one of your multiversal variants, but what about real travel? The movie also treats this new rule about dreams as a known trait of the multiverse, because it's not just America Chavez, it's also Strange, witnessing Defender Strange fighting a demon with America. Either way, there's a lot to unpack here. Doctor Strange's spell of forgetting. Another elephant in the room we have to discuss is No Way Home. While everyone loved the movie, the plot didn't exactly make the most sense. The story hinges on Strange's spell going wrong, and instead of making the world forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man, it begins bringing in anyone who knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man into the main universe. What doesn't make sense is how villains who don't know he's Peter end up in his world from different universes. This isn't time travel. We've skipped right to breaching different universes. Tom Hardy's Venom and Jamie Foxx's Electro, for example, shouldn't have any idea about any of the three Spider-Men's real identities. You can make an argument for Venom and say the symbiote hive mind transcends universes, and out there's a Venom who knows Peter is Spidey, so by extension, Tom Hardy's symbiote would know too. But what about Electro? Plot holes mixed with fan service. Not the best look. Incursions and plot holes. Later, Multiverse of Madness would double down on the idea of incursions. Reckless travel between two different universes can cause one or both to be destroyed. When the Illuminati are trying Strange, Reed Richards from Earth 838 warns him about all the risks of inter-universal travel, especially if dreamwalking or the Darkhold is involved, which makes his actions in No Way Home seem really dangerous. We see this with Sinister Strange, a variant of Doctor Strange from a destroyed universe where he gave into the Darkhold, a magical spellbook of immense power. And towards the end, danger is a severe understatement. Things were apocalyptic when the spell was far too unstable. However, everybody forgetting who Peter Parker was and the spell working as it was originally intended managed to suppress the damage and repair the cracks in the multiverse. It's still not the most consistent plot though, because a lot of each Spidey's rogues gallery did make their way into the main universe. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like contact between two universes to me. So what this really ends up looking like is yet another Marvel threat being introduced that could potentially level the entire multiverse, but due to either convenience, luck, or neat little last-minute loopholes, we end up with yet another, this could have happened and it should have, but it didn't. Though if it did, that'd be really bad. The Marvelverse is full of time shenanigans and loopholes that just seem like bad show writing sometimes, but look closely enough and you'll find that some of these rules actually do line up.